Hello everyone. My name is Jaiti Datta. I am your host. Firstly, I would like to thank all of you for taking out time to attend this webinar and hope all of you are doing well and are safe. We have a wonderful mix of attendees from around the world. We could not have asked for more. Before we start the session, I would like to request our attendees to kindly turn off their videos and mute their mics. Kindly post your questions in the below Q&A section. We will take the most relevant one and answer in the Q&A session in the end. Let's get started with an introduction to our new speaker for this evening, Mr. G.M. Kapoor.
Hello.
Welcome to the show. Mr. G.M. Kapoor is a long-time resident of Calcutta, is an ex-alumni of IIT Bhubaneswar as well as IIMC, Calcutta. He is a member of the Institution of Engineers as well as a chartered engineer. Professionally, he is an independent management consultant after having been involved in chemical trading and manufacturing. He is a Trade and Commerce Advisor to the Royal Norwegian Consulate, Norway in Kolkata, an active Rotarian. He is currently the Rotary Ambassador for the district. He has been active in many social services and civil society activities. He is a member of National Governing Council and the State Governor of the West Bengal, Calcutta regional chapters of the Indian National Trust for Art and Cultural Heritage, INTAC, and is also serving on its Central Executive and Finance Committees. He has been associated with INTAC since its inception in 1984. This organization, set up by the Government of India, is an autonomous body, has been active in heritage conservation and restoration of architectural, material, and natural heritage all over the country. Welcome on board, sir. We also have with us our two other speakers. We have Riddhi Mukherjee with us. He is an avid wildlife photographer and has been filming the Sundarbans since 2004. His works have been featured in National Geographic Traveler, BBC, Lonely Planet India, Sanctuary Asia, Wild Planet, and also being recognized by the Federation of Indian Photography. Riddhi is also a member of prestigious Nikon Professional Service Program. Welcome, Riddhi, on board.
Thank you.
Also, we have our final speaker for this evening, Ms. Akanksha Garg, founder director of Waxpol Hotels and Resort. She is an avid traveler, conservationist, and wildlife enthusiast. She is a part of the governing council of the Responsible Tourism Society of India. She is a successful hotelier and is a part of many initiatives ranging from policy making of tourism departments at regional and national level. Our chain of resorts are spreading across the renowned national parks of India. One of our most innovative and sustainable projects is the Sundarban Tiger Camp, which was opened in 2004 and played a pivotal role in developing sustainable and responsible tourism in a remote place like Sundarbans. This resort has been shaping life since its inception. Thank you for joining us over. Over to Mr. Kapoor.
Thank you, Jayati, and welcome, friends, to this wonderful trip to the Sundarbans, for which I need to thank my good friend Akanksha, who is actually a tiger, and she can arrange sightings of tigers for you at Pench, at Sundarbans, at Dwars. So she has put together this program, and actually INTAC is involved in natural heritage conservation. And when this idea was mooted to us, I took it up immediately because, especially in view of the recent cyclone, we felt that the importance of Sundarbans needs to be highlighted. And we have, I think, excellent presentation by Riddhi. I'm sure you will all enjoy it. And without much ado, I'd like to hand over to Akanksha for taking it forward. Thank you very much once again to all of you for having joined us.
Very good afternoon, and it's so good to see that this pleasant weather in Calcutta and the rest of India. We have Riddhi on board with us, and he'll be taking you through the journey of the unknown Sundarbans. What is the Sundarbans? How do you get there? What are the prey-based, predator-based, the culture? We will be completely discussing this whole scenario during our presentation. One request. As we are going through, if you have any questions, please, as Jayati requested earlier, post them in the Q&A section so that we can answer them for you in the end of the session. Without much ado, Riddhi, can we please start?
Yeah, sure. Let's start.
Thank you. Riddhi, you know, everybody talks about the Sundarbans. The Sundarban is the world's largest mangrove forest with tiger habitat. But can you tell me something more? What is unique? Because I believe it around is 10,000 square kilometers, of which 60% is in Bangladesh and 40% is in India. So, what more
Yeah.
information can you give me on this? Yeah.
See, the Sundarbans is the largest propagating deltaic ecosystem, and it's also the largest single stretch of mangrove vegetation. The most of the Sundarbans part falls in Bangladesh, around the 2/3, and 1/3 falls in India. It spreads over two districts, North and South 24 Parganas. Out of that, around 1660 square kilometer is protected forest. So that's if you consider Sundarbans geographically, it lies along the eastern coastline, and it's the only forest, only mangrove forest with a tiger habitat, with the presence of tiger. That makes this part of the world so special. And also, it's a very unique ecosystem in itself. It needs a lot of understanding, needs a lot of research to understand this ecosystem. It's much more about its tigers only. It's not just about the tigers of Sundarbans. Sundarbans has much more to offer. I guess we will cover that.
Of course. So, you know, what we want to tell you, Sundarban is just not about the tiger. It's also important to understand the connectivity, the locals, the culture. And if you look at the small map on the left-hand side, we have a small red dot which highlights Kolkata. Jayati's put the cursor there. And you can see from there are a couple of ways of reaching the Sundarbans. So one is you can come via the Hooghly with an overnight boat cruise. And the second and easier option is that you can come by road. It approximately takes you 4.5 hours to reach the islands. The road generally involves around 2.5 to 3 hours, depending on what size of vehicle you're taking. So you come from Calcutta to a place called Gothkhali, and from there you have to come by boat to the network of islands within the Sundarban region. So once you reach Gothkhali, you know, there are different kind of jetties here. There's a ferry ghat, there's a launch ghat, there is a small boat ghat where people differently use it. For example, the local people over here use ferry ghats to ferry across from one island to the other island. The launch ghats are used by tourists, by day trip travelers, and this is basically where the bigger boats come and park themselves. And then there is one more small ghat which is used for setting stuff for transportation. So once you come to Gothkhali, it is very important to note that if you want to travel within the Sundarbans, you have to undertake a boat journey. Now, there are many types of boats available, which we will be discussing later in the presentation. Briefly, I will tell you what can you do in the Sundarbans once you reach there on day one. So it takes you around 5 hours to reach to the Sundarbans. Then say you leave early morning by 8 in Calcutta. You are there by 12:30, 1 o'clock at whichever resort you want to go and stay in. There you will go and have lunch. After lunch, what we recommend is instead of going back into the park, because the park opening times are from sunrise to sunset, we request that you go and experience the culture by either doing a village walk or a village interaction or doing a dinghy boat ride or visiting a Dayapur village hut so that you can understand how different the culture is. This will actually also help you understand the ecosystem and your visit to the park on day 2. Now, when you're making a plan to go to the Sundarbans, it depends. If you're looking for wildlife, if you're going for flora, fauna, etc., you will need to plan it out in such a way that you get optimum time. Most people try and go and do a day trip to Sundarbans, which is generally not recommended because it's just a touch and go. We recommend a minimum of 2 nights, 3 days, so that you can explore, say, Sajne Khali. Sajne Khali is a watchtower and also where the wildlife forest department is there, and it has a West Bengal tourism bungalow. The second point is Sudanya Khali Watchtower. It's a fantastic watchtower. Riddhi will talk more about it. You have a caged walkway, you have a sweetwater pond, and observation lines cut into the park from where you can do animal sightings. Then there is Dubanke Watchtower. Now, Dubanke approximately takes 3.5 hours from Dayapur Island to reach one way, and you generally go through creeks and canals, which are called Marani, Dhuari, which again Riddhi will be talking about in detail, will be fantastic to understand. Dubanke has an elevated walkway, a deer rehabilitation center, and this also gives you a very good understanding of what the park looks like from inside. Once you're in, because generally when you're outside, you'll see the park is very dense. So once you're on the walkway, you can see, get a good idea, a good view of the expanse of the forest. And of course, the most favorite and the only watchtower in the core area is Neti Dopani. You have a 300-year-old ruin found here. It has historical significance. And this watchtower is the only one, as I mentioned, in the core area, and it is at a 5-river meeting point called Panchmukhani. You can see the Matla River on the left going through, and this is the last tourism zone as well. We do not have any tourism activity in the Sundarban Reserve Forest, which is the core area, because of a couple of challenges. The river is more volatile, the currents are much stronger. Of course, the border, we have security in that area. And in case if any of the boats are broken down, no help will reach on time. There is no mobile network connectivity. So tourism in that zone is closed. This does not mean that the numbers of tigers are less. Mind you, every tiger has its own area. So if you say the sanctuary zone is very well populated. And we are not going to be focusing on Jharkhali Watchtower because I believe that's a very touristy picnic kind of a watchtower. You really don't have much sightseeing there. If you just want to go and do a day trip, I would recommend you rather go to Jharkhali and come back. But that is not the true essence of the Sundarbans. Last but not the least, we have the Buri Dabri Watchtower, which is on the Bangladesh side of the Indian Sundarbans. It's one of my favorite watchtowers. It has it's around 500 meters long. So you have a caged walkway. You have a parcel point where you can see mangroves which have molds on them like tumors. Then you have a telescopic snail viewing area. You have a mud walk, and then in the end you have the Raimangal viewpoint from where you can actually see into the Bangladesh side of the Sundarbans. Now coming in terms of talking about villages, in Dayapur Island you have the Adibasi Pada, you have the Hamilton Island, you can see, which is mentioned in Zilla RF. Now Hamilton Island is very popular because it is mentioned in Amitabh Ghosh's Hungry Tide. So if you want to read more, there are a lot of books you can read about the Sundarbans. Now we will start with our presentation. Jayati, can we move to the next slide? Riddhi, can you please tell me about this picture? You know, I know the Sundarbans has mangroves, but I can see grass in this image. So what is so unique about this?
So you can not only see on the grass here, but you can see the tiger pug marks as well, right? These hole-like shapes here in the mud, these are tiger pug marks, which to an untrained eye might look like a hole punched into the mud. And the grass here denotes that this soil has a lot of sand in it, else the grass won't grow. And the grass is very different from the grass we are used to seeing in the Gangetic plains. This grass grows in the mangrove delta because only mangrove trees can survive in this ecosystem. Normal plants that you see in this part of the world, the Gangetic plain or the other parts of India, except for mangrove parts, they can't survive in this terrain.
Understandable, very true, because you know I haven't seen this grass in many places, and I believe this picture is taken at Dubanke. Am I correct?
Yes, is it?
So I believe also the terrain and the kind of plantation which you have on island to island also depends on the salinity of the soil, depending how far is it from the mouth of Bay of Bengal. And last but not the least, it also helps into adaptability of what kind of species. Generally, when I've gone into the park, I've generally seen deers most predominantly surviving in areas which has a lot of these grassland kind of structures.
Yes, absolutely. The salinity in the water varies. It varies from 8 parts per thousand to 20 parts per thousand in Sundarbans. Like if you go to near the Bay of Bengal areas, inside the core, where it's very risky to go in those parts again. But those parts have a very high salinity level in water. Even if you go to Neti Dhopani, the water is much more saline than parts where you start your boat journey from.
Yeah, from example, Khali, correct.
Yeah.
And if you like what you mentioned about the pug marks, you're right. It does look like something has just been punched in. But I believe
Yeah.
he just had a tiger walk in across and enter the island, and one can
Yeah, we
actually see
were photographing this tiger actually just
your
1 or 2 minutes before.
1 or 2 photos before. So
Yeah.
yeah, you've got a fantastic click because you can, if you actually look at this image, you can see that it's so clear. The mud banks are very clear. The grassland again a little dense, but the mangrove forest is completely dense and it has very little visibility. So it is
Yeah.
very important to focus when you're cruising into the park and have your eyes open and have a very good guide on board or the locals on board who have a very trained eye.
Yeah.
Can you go to the next slide? Wow, this is a beautiful picture. Can you tell us something about, oh wow, so these are nematophores, Riddhi. Can you tell us
Yeah.
something about that? Hmm.
So first of all, about the picture, you can see a river behind. You can see a creek coming into this side to our part, and you can see a snake on the mud bank. That's actually a king cobra.
Oh,
Yeah, and you have pneumatophores. You have a mangrove tree lying inside. So you have to understand that Sundarbans is a delta, which means that it's a maze of islands and creeks and rivers. The Sundarbans, Indian Sundarbans part has around 108 islands, and out of them people live on 54 islands, I guess. And where people live, those islands are called the Abad part in local term, and the forested areas are called Badabon. That too again in local term. Every day you have 2 time high tide and 2 time you have low tide, because this is a tidal forest. The water is directly connected with the sea, so you have proper rise and fall of water level as well. And as you said, we have big rivers here like Matla, Biddadhori, Raimongol, these kind of rivers. And we have also very small creeks, channels, and small rivers as well. Very small, very narrow rivers. Like Matla now is very, very small, right? It's not the Matla it used to be earlier.
yes, I do agree because of siltation and of course also because of a lot of silt coming in. The vatlas become less, and we don't have really have a freshwater source coming in from the Indian side. It's mostly the Raimangal River, which is giving a lot of fresh water coming in from the Bangladesh side and feeding
Yes.
the park. So that does make a difference. Also, what I feel is very unique is the Sundarbans being such a Mars Delta has so many species of mangroves living here, which we'll also
Yeah.
discuss later. But Riddhi, can you tell me more about what are the sanctuary rules? What are the timings one can enter the park? What time can they get out? How does it work?
So the sanctuary rules are we have full day safaris in Sundarbans.
Hmm.
We get permissions for either a full day safari, one
Hmm.
full day safari, or 3 full day safaris for one permit. The safari timings are from sunrise to sunset, and we have only boat safaris here, no gypsy safaris in Sundarbans because of the terrain. And
Yes.
you can't walk inside the park for obvious reasons, like in other national parks. You can only walk inside the watchtowers, which are allotted for the tourists, which are fenced and well protected. And the boats, the boats we use for the safari, it can't be anchored
Yes. So I would like to mention in detail here, like what Riddhi
on
just
neutral gear.
said.
We have gears.
Hmm. Riddhi, we're losing your voice, so I will just continue on this part. So it is very important to know that the Sundarban National Park does not allow you, suppose you have a wildlife sighting, we can slow down the boat, but it is not allowed to stop the engine of the boat inside the park at any time until and unless you are not stopping at a watchtower. Also, what is very important to know, this is the only park in India which is open 365 days, and you have permission to go from sunrise to sunset. So, if you actually want to encash on using it from sunrise to sunset, we recommend that you plan and get your permissions all on day one, and you fix your guide for the next 3 days on day one itself. So, you have the same guide with you. Otherwise, what happens is the guides go on rotation, and you will get a new guide every day. Also, the field office opens way past sunrise around 7:30 a.m. to 8 a.m. Whereas if you want to leave earlier, if the sun is up, you can leave at 5 a.m. as well. and you can have your lunch and your breakfast on the boat. What we generally do recommend is when you're booking your cruise or anything, please choose a reliable tour operator. As most of the people in Sundarbans, there are many properties. There are more than 100 properties in the Sundarbans, but it is very important to go with a responsible, accredited organization. This is just for your safety and to also ensure in the sustainable development of the location. Riddhi, when we were talking about the channels, you were telling me
Yeah,
about Marani, Bharani, Duani. What are these
yeah.
Marani, Bharani, Duani? Can you please tell our participants here? Yeah.
So they all are different kind of channels. Like as I was saying earlier, Sundarbans has many small creeks and rivers. So Maranis are very narrow creeks that reaches a dead end inside the forest and forms a swamp area. And Varanis are rivers, tidal rivers that are connected with tidal rivers again on both ends. And Duanias are some creeks that are flowing on an east and west direction, which get a great rise of the water levels, or no sign at all of the receding water even during the ebb.
High tide and low tide.
Yeah,
Right. So what is very interesting is, when we've been talking about the Sundarbans, the high level rise tiding, low level tiding, why is it important to know it is a Marani or a Dharani or a Duani?
yeah. So, like for example, if a tigress has its cubs, it will never take the risk of crossing a Duania,
Okay.
right? Because Duanias are wide rivers. It can rise to a great height during the high tide. So until unless it is forced to cross the river, it won't cross. Like
Okay.
for example, if a male tiger comes into the island and the
Hmm.
tiger thinks its cubs' lives are danger, so it
Huh.
will cross. Else it won't. So knowing this kind of which rivers a tiger can cross at what time,
Hmm.
that helps in sighting. Also in other kind of wildlife sightings as well. It's not only about the tiger.
Yes, I believe so. And also, it is important to know that when you're in the Sundarbans, Maranis are the basically the channels where no tourism boats are allowed. They are generally only used by fishermen and honey collectors who are given permission so that they can go inside and collect honey and fish and come out. Bharani are actually the smaller creeks when you go inside the park, and that's where you do your sightings. Duanias are again mostly towards where the village, it actually also creates a natural border between the village and the forest. So this is very important. And in this image, you can see here, most of the boats which the fishermen use are either hand-oared boats or they are sailboats. And they're just returning from after fishing in the park, right? Catching some fish.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, fantastic. Can you please tell me how the mangroves are silent protectors of the shorelines? Because we've just had the cyclone Amphan, we've had Bulbul before, we've had Ayla before, and I believe like because of the Sundarbans, Calcutta to a very large extent, and the part of southern Bengal was protected. So,
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Like the speed at which Amphan hit the Sundarbans, the
right.
speed got much reduced because of the the presence of mangrove forest. So they act as a natural barrier, like a coral reef. They absorb the power, and
Yes.
also they prevent soil erosion by stabilizing the sediments with root, and also they filter pollutants which are coming from the land part and trying to enter into the sea for the tidal flow of the river. So they
Oh,
traps
really?
them inside their tangled roots.
So you mean to say if any garbage is being sent by a leather factory near Calcutta, it is actually getting collected and filtered by the mangroves before it reaches the forest area. So it's actually giving us defense on the south side, but also from the city life.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Because nowadays nature needs protection from human beings, right?
Right. So I think we should encourage people that if they really want to protect Calcutta and West Bengal and the whole habitat, something should be encouraged to is to do mangrove plantations in a sustainable way, in a very planned way. I think that's something which is very required, because I believe wherever, if you talk about Dayapur, Bali Island, the northern islands, the situation is more or less normal after Amphan. It's only when talking about the southern part near Haldia, Bakhali, Fraserganj, which were very heavily affected, because the people over there they've cut off the mangroves to give rise to small cities.
Exactly.
And if you look at the book again, I'm mentioning Amitabh Ghosh's Hungry Tide. He talks about back in the olden days when people had cut off the mangrove plantation to make, houses, and then we had a cyclone of similar strength, and it washed away the whole population. So I think today it's very important that we let mangroves flourish, and we all do our part in helping in plantation drives wherever possible. Okay, so what kind of mangrove plants do we have here, and what kind of roots do they have?
See, so we have 84 species of mangrove plants itself in Sundarbans. Out of them, 26 are true mangrove species, 29 associates, and we have 29 back mangrove species. You can see here, these are Sundari trees. The Sundarban, the name itself, Sundarbans, came from the name of the Sundari trees.
Yeah, it means
they have adapted because of they have to adapt to this condition. They have certain aerial roots called the pneumatophores. These roots grow upwards.
Yeah, they're breathing roots. So
they are breathing roots.
They're breathing roots.
Yeah, they actually allows the mangrove plants to absorb gases from the atmosphere, because the mud is very thick. And even when the roots are submerged during the high tide time, the trees can trap gas inside the pneumatophores, so it can use it for that time.
Okay, and I believe every single plant, there are many species of pneumatophores. They all have a very different way of germinating. So some of them have seeds, some of them drop like kakra. I've seen that, just the plant just falls down and pierces into the ground. Of course, you have these stilk roots, you have the bulb-shaped roots, you have the snake-shaped roots. But when I generally talk about Sundarbans, of course, Sundari being the beautiful forest, or means Sundarban also, the name where it comes like Sundar, beautiful forest, comes from this plant. Can you tell me what, the mangroves are also very connected to the tigers? About this Hital Gach, the Nipa palm.
Yeah, the Nipa palm is actually called tiger palm because of its certain color, which matches very closely to tiger coat. And tigers can hide behind them very well. The tigers use these trees for ambush purpose. And even when they're on the mud banks, they will just sit behind the mangrove thicket of the tiger palm. And you can't differentiate because of the coat color and the tree plant's leaf colors.
So there is a story which is very well set in the Sundarbans, that you may not see the tiger, but the tiger is always watching you. And it is true because, of the density of the forest, there can be chances. That's why it's very important to keep a keen lookout when you're going through these small creek and canals at both sides, and have as I mentioned before, a trained guide with you. When people generally come to the Sundarbans they generally come to see the tiger. But I have personally seen, otters and a lot of other animals that people generally miss out on. Can you tell us what these species are?
We have a lot of mammal species. We have a lot of marine life and bird life as well in Sundarbans. Like we have around 170 bird species present in Sundarbans. Some of them are migratory birds and some of them are residents. We have a lot of mammals, like here you can see a small clawed otter, the smooth-coated otter. We have 2 species of otter itself in Sundarbans.
And do you sight them very regularly, Riddhi, or is it a challenge to find them?
No, we get frequent sightings of the otters.
We get very frequent sightings of the otters. They are very cute and beautiful animals.
Yeah, not as frequent as the chital deer, but very frequent.
Love the way we call the spotted deer the chital deer in West Bengal, but the chital and the spotted deer are the same. They are not the cheetah, like the big cat which you have in Africa. Just to clear that doubt for a lot of people who come and ask me, do you have cheetal there?
Yeah.
Also, can you tell me about what other, do you have any lesser cats in the Sundarbans?
Yeah, we have three different species of lesser cats in Sundarbans. For example, here you can see a leopard cat.
Hmm.
This is the smallest of the cat species. Yeah, present in Sundarbans. You can see it. I mean, it's not very rare, but it's rare. The most rare being the fishing cat because of its nocturnal nature.
Yeah, I believe the
It
challenge
don't,
for being the fishing cat is that you can't get out at night and go into the park or to the habitat. But I
yeah,
believe if someone really wants to see it, they can leave early morning and late dusk time.
yeah, especially during the high winter months like December, January, when the winter is at its peak,
Hmm.
the fishing cat will come on the mud banks to
Hmm.
soak in some warmth. And
Hmm.
maybe at the time of dusk, when you are getting out of the forest, it will
Hmm.
come on the mud bank.
Okay, so there are possibilities. That's a very
Yeah.
beautiful picture showing the terrain, the pneumatophores, and the leopard cat. And have you had any good jungle cat sightings?
Yeah, jungle cat is very common in Sundarbans. Again, not as common as the chital deer, but we get very frequent sighting of the jungle cat as well.
Hmm.
Yeah, you can see images from different sightings, and we can get very close to them. They because we get them very less inside the forest. Mostly we see them outside the villages.
I've had a regular problem of jungle cats coming and eating my fowl and my fish and so on at Sundarban Tiger Camp. But I
Yeah.
believe it's one of the most beautiful cats to see because the coat is just one color. It's got some spots which can be easily identified. And I think you've taken a beautiful picture here of the jungle cat.
Yeah, they
Uh,
are so cute. Look at
they're
the
beautiful
kitten.
because they're very cute. And what about, recently it was all over media that a wolf has been sighted in the Sundarbans, and I didn't ever have an opportunity to go and sight it. I have
Yeah,
seen golden jackal in the village side. Can you give me
yeah.
more depth to our participants here so they can understand what exactly happened?
So I
Yeah.
will talk about the jackal first, then I will come on the wolf part.
Yes, please.
Jackals you can see on the village side pretty frequently. Sometimes it crosses the rivers and comes inside the forest as well. Like this photograph was taken inside the forest. And the wolf, it's a very interesting case. We saw it in 2017, I guess April. And prior to that, there were no sighting reports of a wolf in Sundarbans or ever in any mangrove habitat. So when this thing happened, the experts tried to explain what happened, and many theories were floating around. And what seemed most promising to most people was that it might be some villagers who might have bought an Indian wolf from other parts of Bengal, because we have Indian wolves in other parts of Bengal. So somebody might have bought it as a pup, and he might have thought it as a dog. It could be a dog, and bought it here. And once it grew and grew, he
Ah.
released into the wild. So the forest department took the necessary steps. It got relocated to its proper habitat. But that's one very interesting picture we have here.
I believe there were only two photographs taken in the whole time that wolf was inside this terrain. And this is something which actually lives on dry, arid, or lesser green
Yeah,
area.
yeah, yeah. Around two or three photographs.
Yes. So beautiful, beautiful capture of the only two canines which have ever been sighted, and only one still remains. That is the golden jackal. What about other mammals and other wildlife? Like we mentioned, you were talking about cheetal.
Yeah.
Can you tell our participants here, how the cheetal and the rhesus macaque and the wild mode differ from rest of India?
From rest of India, like in other parks with tigers in them, you
Yeah.
have other mammals that give out alarm calls, so that you can just understand that a tiger is moving or a tiger is around somewhere. In Sundarbans, we have only the rhesus macaque and the spotted deer present to give alarm calls, and the jungle fowl as well. Jungle fowl gives out alarm calls sometimes, but
Hmm.
it's not a very reliable alarm call, right? But the
Yeah.
spotted deer and the rhesus macaque, you get 100% assurance.
Hmm. And
And
you
they,
have
they serve as a prey base for the tigers as well. Like we have a very good healthy population of cheetal deer. If you consider the tiger population in Sundarbans, the cheetal, prey base, and the wild boars, it needs to be there. So they serve another very important purpose that way as well.
No, I believe, there was a lot of confusion and misconception post ILA that, our numbers of herbivores has gone down. But what Riddhi is telling us today, it's fantastic news that the prey base at Sundarbans is very strong, and it is giving our animals here, they've adapted very well to be eating seeds, roots, leaves from the mangroves. And you can see the wild boar here, he's digging into on the embankment side and trying to eat some roots. So the prey base is very healthy. And what about the bird life? We've had a lot of birders coming to the Sundarbans just to see birds, marsh birds. Oh, we have the Buffy fish owl. Can you tell us about that? Yeah.
So we have two kind of fish owls present in Sundarbans. One is brown fish owl, and one is the Buffy fish owl. You can find the Buffy fish owl only in Sundarbans in India. And what makes it different from the brown fish owl is the presence of this white supercilium over its eye. It's a very unique species that way. And we have other mangrove species as well, like the mangrove whistler, mangrove pitta. Another interesting bird is white-browed scimitar babbler, which is generally found in Himalayan foothills, but we also have that in Sundarbans.
So do you get to see these birds regularly, or are they like migratory, resident? What is the status?
No, the mangrove whistler and the mangrove pitta are residents. But because the monsoon period is their mating and nesting time, you get more frequent sightings. Buffy fish owl, we get sightings throughout the year.
Throughout the year. So it's very interesting to know that Sundarban is a year-round destination, that means. So for birders, the best time to come down is the monsoons.
Yeah, because it depends on the species they want to photograph.
Right.
Like,
I believe about the kingfishers as well. You were telling me about the ruddy the other day when we were discussing that it's sighted most during the monsoons.
Yeah, because of the same reason. Because it's the mating period of these birds, so they give out a very distinct call, mating call.
Can you tell us?
So you can spot them that way. And then we have the black-capped kingfisher, which is a migratory bird. You can see that during the winter period. The collared you can see more or less throughout the year, but you get better sightings in the winter months because in the winter months they are less active because of the high winters, especially during the morning and the afternoon. The brown fisher, brown-winged, is also a migratory bird. You get good sightings in winter. And we have three other common species, the white-throated, the common, and the pied kingfisher. They are very common. They are very common, and you can see them throughout the year.
Can you tell me a quick difference between the brown-winged and the ruddy? Because most people actually end up confusing the species,
Yeah. So first of all, there is a color difference. The brown-winged is more orangish, and the ruddy is more on the reddish side, the crimson red side. The beak is very different. If you are watching through a binocular and if you are spotting a ruddy or a brown-winged kingfisher, you will notice the differences properly. And the call is also very different.
Call is also very different. And like you mentioned, you can see the ruddy most during the monsoon and the brown-winged more towards the winter side. So I think one really needs to plan. But other than the kingfishers, I think one of my best sightings ever has been the fastest bird in the world, the peregrine falcon.
Yeah.
So,
and we have, apart from the peregrine falcon is the star, I should say. But apart from that, we have a lot of raptor birds here as well. Like the white-bellied sea eagle, it's a very large bird, and the changeable hawk eagle dark morph. The common morph of the changeable hawk eagle is very common in India. It's found throughout the India. But the dark morph is found in Sundarbans, and we get very, very good sightings, very frequent sightings of the species. And you also have ospreys, shikras, crested serpent eagle, Eurasian hobby, oriental honey buzzard, which is also another fantastic bird.
So tell me one thing, we have the crested serpent eagle. So what is a serpent like? Do we have a lot of reptiles in this region? I know you showed the picture of the king cobra earlier.
Yeah. So I have a surprise for you. Let's
Ah.
discuss that first. Then we
Oh,
will go to the serpent part. Yeah.
oh my God, what is this? Tell me.
See, these are the two saltwater crocodiles.
Okay.
These are the largest reptiles found in Sundarbans. And what's happening here is they're into a territorial fight. These are two male crocodiles, and you can see the impact. The water spray is getting so high,
Hmm.
and
My,
because of the fight, one croc lost its leg.
uh-huh. Oh wow! So the spray of the I did not know this before that crocodiles also have a territory.
Yeah, they're very territorial animals. Like if you next time when you are into Sundarbans,
Hmm.
if you go to the Dobanki part, you will see one particular crocodile there.
Yes, I have seen that, and I've seen the one which you're talking about in Sarakhali when I was going to
Yeah,
the missing leg. Now I know the story behind it. Okay, that these are the guys who were fighting before. Okay,
yes.
and what is the largest size of crocodile you've seen, Riddhi?
Uh, I have to, it's very big, very big. It's hard to put in fit, but it's very big.
So I actually
What?
measured mine with the size of the boat which we were in to get an idea
Wow,
of the size of the crocodile. So it was around 21 feet.
wow.
And that actually got jitters too. And my boatman was telling me that, Didi, when I was younger, I've seen much bigger than this. And I was like, okay. I think I'm happy seeing this size because when we go and travel in North India, we generally see one which are 8 feet, 9 feet, much smaller, like one third the size, literally. So this is very unique that you can see in the Sundarbans are the saltwater crocodiles, and beautiful they are. It's amazing to see, how different species, things like the king cobra, who are known to live in dry, arid conditions, are
Yeah,
now found in the Sundarbans.
yeah.
It's
No, it's not like that. It's nothing alien to that. I mean, yeah, it's found in dry conditions, but it's adapting to mangrove conditions. I don't see a problem in that. So we
That's
have,
the problem, but how people are adapting to the Sundarbans. So many species are moving here.
yeah, like the red-tailed bamboo pit viper. Take for example, the pit vipers. We have a lot of pit vipers all over India, but this particular species is now the experts are saying it could be a subspecies. And we have a lot of other snakes: Russell's viper, the dog-faced water snake, ornamental snake,
Hmm.
the monocled cobra, king cobra. Lot of snake species.
So it's beautiful. So if anybody's interested in watching snakes, I think the best time would be to come during the monsoons as well.
Yeah,
Or yeah,
no, monsoon. Yeah,
monsoon.
July till October.
July till October is good for snake sighting, if anybody would like to do that. And what can you tell me about our little friend who likes to climb trees? Yes, the water monitor lizard.
Yeah.
So what is he doing there in the left image on the left? I can see there's a
So
bird.
also now the experts are saying that this could be a subspecies.
This could be a.
It's entering this bird's nest to eat.
Mhm. To eat eggs. Okay. So
And
generally,
if you're not trying to protect its nest here.
was it successful? Did you manage to wait and see if the bird was able to save its eggs?
Yeah, they attacked in a large group.
They attacked in a large group.
Yeah.
Okay. So the local water monitor lizards are known as gorsap, and they're generally found in the forest and in the village areas. They generally come and eat, ducks and chicken and eggs. Small eggs and small animals. They can swim underwater as well, and they're very largely found, and they're not very harmful to humans. And I believe that if you don't harm any animal, that animal in turn will not harm you. But it's a beautiful species to come and see. It's much bigger than a monitor lizards, which are found in North India, and they're found throughout the year as well. Now coming to something very interesting. What else can we see in the marine life? I know with the lockdown right now in place, I was getting news from the Sundarbans that a lot of dolphins are being sighted, near the Panchmukhini side, which is the Matla Five River Junction. What other species of dolphins are found here?
In Sundarbans, we get only the Iravati dolphin. And the Hooghly part, which is far away from the Shojnekhali tourism zone, where we do our safari, we get also the Gangetic dolphin, which is a freshwater dolphin species.
And that's a very clear picture of the jellyfish. It's beautifully taken. And what about mud skippers? I really enjoy watching them on the banks whenever I get to Dubanke or on Waxfall Ghat. We generally have quite a few of them during low tide skipping around. And back in the day, it used to be a delicacy for the locals. Now I believe they've stopped eating it, thankfully. They're conserving it more than eating it up. So can you tell us more about that? Hello? Riddhi, are you there? I think I seem to have lost Riddhi's voice, so I will just continue. Sonali, can you please log out and log in again in case you have lost sound? Yeah. So mudskippers are found generally in the Sundarbans. They're beautiful creatures. They have these blue spots all over them. They skip on the want, and they also come out and live on the land to dry out and get some sun. And on the right-hand side, you have these fiddler crabs. These crabs are very unique. They're found in red color, yellow color, and blue color. And generally, when the males fight, and if the claw breaks off, you will have the other smaller arm grow out, and that's how they adapt. They keep on fighting, the claw keeps on breaking and adapting. Fantastic sighting is found on the ghats near the village side, and Dubanke Watch Tower has a very large population of these beautiful fiddler crabs as well. Now coming to my favorite, Riddhi.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now I can hear you. Can you now come back to the most elusive of all, and the swamp tiger? Let's talk about him. Yeah.
So first of all, why swamp tiger? Why not a normal tiger? Because of its habitat. It lives in the swampland. And from the tigers living in the highland parks or dry deciduous parks or Himalayan foothills, these tigers are very different in all sorts. They have a very distinct head pattern. Their coat color is much orangish. And their territories, like in other parts, the territories only include land. In Sundarbans, experts say that the territories are also include rivers. Like here you can see a tiger crossing a narrow creek. This is a Marani, for example. And you can see how muscular the tiger looks. Because of the habitat, the body fat percentage is very low. And the tiger swims through rivers. They are champion swimmers. They cross large rivers in minutes, within minutes. Doesn't matter what the tidal condition is, what the wind condition is. If it wants to cross a river, it will cross.
One quick question here, Riddhi. There are a lot of, again, another thought process that people come and ask me that we can only see the tiger during low tide. Is it true, or can you also sight them during high tide?
No, the tigers move during low tide, high tide, every time. So now coming to the question that how do we get to see a tiger in Sundarbans?
Yes.
One is pure luck. You are taking a safari through the forest and you just get to see a tiger.
Right.
The other way is you track them down. So when it comes to tracking, we either have to depend on alarm calls, like as I was saying earlier, or we have to depend on pug marks. We have to guess a movement pattern, how old the pug mark is or how fresh the pug mark is. It also varies depending on the soil condition. Like you can see a tiger in different conditions in Sundarbans. Like before crossing a canal, it will spend a long time sitting on a mud bank, because in the water, it's most vulnerable. A crocodile can attack, a boat can come, anything can happen to it. So it will examine the tidal condition, the mud bank on the other side. So you need to look out on the banks. And the other way is they come on the mud banks to mark their territory.
Mark the territory in the mud banks. Okay.
Yeah.
Why would you do that?
Because once another tiger is coming into the island, it has to come through the mud banks. So this is like the border fence. This is my territory. Don't enter this territory. And during the high tide time and after a drizzle or a spell of rain, these prey marks get washed away. so they will come out on the bank. Sometimes the deers are eating grass also on the mud bank, so it will come out to hunt. This is actually Dobanki. You can see the fence behind, the Dobanki fence, which the forest department puts to protect, to separate the forest from the village.
Actually, that's a fantastic initiative done by the forest department, that they have finished a complete line of fencing throughout the forest side, which is connected to the village side, so that they can avoid the tiger from crossing into the village and reduce man-animal conflict. And this picture which you've taken, I believe this is taken early morning, because I can see the land glistening with the light of the rising sun, and we can still see some fog. So I'm assuming this picture.
This is winter. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful. That's a beautiful picture. And very well taken, because you know this picture completely tells you with the mangroves. You can see the nematophores, you can see the fencing, talking about man-animal conflict. You can see the tiger sitting there with the deer, which talks about the prey base. I think it's quite complete in this complete sense. Just one question about the marking. One quick question. Do the tigers also do scatting here for marking the territory? Because you know of the high tide, low tide. Is that an effective way?
Yeah, they will scat on the highlands of the park. Like locally, those parts are called Tek in Sundarbans, if you remember.
Right.
Those are local sandy highlands. So they will scat on the Teks. I have seen and photographed tigers scatting there.
You've seen the photograph. So that basic behavior of the animals stays the same. Fantastic.
Yeah.
One question I would like to ask here is, if you can go back to the previous slide, Radhi, a lot of people have this assumption that the tigers here are man-eaters. What would you like to tell our viewers about that?
This is a man-eating tiger will hunt down the human being, but this is not happening in Sundarbans. Once the fishermen or the honey collectors are entering areas which are not permitted, which is tiger territory, conflicts are happening. That happens all throughout India, all over the world. That happens. That's conflict. That's not man-eating. So these tigers are not man-eaters. You can't label them as villains.
You can't do that. I agree with you. So this is very important for again rowers to know that when you're coming in, the tigers are not man-eaters. It's just that when illegal fishermen, illegal honey collectors, without the permission of the forest department, go inside the park and they try to hide, that they end up becoming victims of a tiger attack, and that is generally termed as a man-eater. It's not the choice of the animal itself to go and hunt down human beings. It does not have a taste developed for human flesh. And there are, of course, a lot of theories on this. Unfortunately, none of them actually have a complete conclusion. So we will not be getting into debate on that. I am sure there's more research happening. But just note, these are not man-eaters. Now, when we're talking about going into the Sundarbans, Riddhi, it's very important to get the right kind of boat. Now, the boat which you can see in the image here, it's a tourist boat, which can be used for tourism, which can be used for day trips. Some of the boats have, of course, accommodation on board. We have the MV Oceanus with accommodation on board, which has a luxury bed. It has a sofa-style sitting, deck, and so on. But most of the boats here generally have two types of toilets. One is the Indian style and a Western style. But the modern and the privately owned boats generally just have a Western toilet and one of those. And it is very important when you're choosing a boat provider that you please check that he is accredited and he has a good boat. Because when you're talking about the Sundarbans, you can get a boat for 5,000, you can get a boat for 6,000, you can get a boat for 10,000, 12,000. But what really depends is the safety protocols they have on board. Number one being, do they have life jackets on board? Do they have first aid kit on board? Do they have a sunshade and rain shade? Because when you're traveling inside the park for long hours, these are important points to figure out. Because if there is no sunshade, you will spend most of your time in the lower deck and you will not be able to sight any wildlife. Also, it is important to note that the crew should be local because they understand the terrain. And yeah, and also always try and take it through an accredited or a responsible tourism provider. Yeah. Now, talking about different type of boats, this is of course what is used for tourism, and you go with these boats to different watchtowers. Now, in our earlier on map, we spoke about different watchtowers. Riddhi, can you tell me what is so interesting about this watchtower, and where is this? Can you guess?
This is actually the Dovanki canopy walk.
Yes.
This is very interesting. You have a protected canopy walk from which you can see the inside of the mangroves, how it is to be inside the mangroves, but it's protected. It's high from the ground. It's protected with fence, and the whole area is protected. So you can get a feel for the forest. And this is also a very good place for bird watching. The other watchtower I would like to mention is Shudhannokhali, where you get good sighting of the red-tailed pit viper, red-tailed bamboo pit viper, the king cobra sometimes. You also get tiger sightings and a lot of bird sightings. And if you ever go to Neti Dhopani, that is also another fantastic watchtower to wait for tigers or birds. Beautiful.
I would just like to add a note here for Netidupani Watchtower. Netidupani Watchtower, being in the core area, at times remains shut. So you may have itineraries by different tourism suppliers saying that Netidupani Watchtower is a part of the visit. But it depends on the forest department because a special permission has to be taken to go there. And after the last cyclone Bulbul, which had happened back in November 2019, the watchtower still hasn't opened. So what we recommend is that at the time, in case you have an itinerary for 3 nights and Etidupani was included, if you can instead go to Buri Dabri Watchtower or maybe spend an extra day cruising within the creeks and canals of the Sundarban National Park, which gives you more opportunities for sighting different wildlife, crabs, and so on. When we're talking about all this, it's very important when we come to a destination to understand the local culture. And the Sundarban people, the history dates back to 300 AD. We have clear evidence of the Mughal Empire leasing out land here to people who were living in the vicinity for farming. This was the first area to come under scientific management and during the British era. And after that, we also had, Sundarban had its own rice variety which they used to grow. And that rice variety was actually used to the saline water conditions. But because of the high yield variety which was introduced later by the Britishers, the current rice which grows in Sundarbans cannot grow on saline soil. It's not the same variety found anymore. Also, what is very unique to this place is to understand that the religion of the people they are mostly Hindus, Muslims, and Christians. They all worship the same goddess called Bon Bibi or the forest goddess, which Riddhi will expand on. And also, it is important to understand at the same time that before tourism really set off in this area, when I'm talking about as early on as 1999, I was a regular traveler there from 1997, used to go and stay at the Sajne Khali Tourist Lodge. The main profession of the people was honey collectors, wood collectors, or fishermen. They were generally catching this fish. They were very dependent on what the catch of the day was to get them food, and that's how they sustain themselves on a daily basis. But today, with tourism coming up, these locals have got opportunity to be employed as guides, rent private boats, get involved in forest department, and it's giving them a fixed employment. But again, even today, this religion plays a very important role. Riddhi, can you please tell us what this image depicts? What is this image?
So this is actually local performers dressed up as different forest gods and goddesses. Here we have Bon Bibi, which is the widely worshipped goddess of the forest, because the people over here are living in so close quarter to natural hazards and powers of nature. They are in, like in other parts, they end up worshipping nature itself in different forms. We have Bon Bibi as the protector of everyone. We have Dokhin Rai, Gaji Sahib, Pir Sahib as different forms of tiger gods. We have Ma Monosha as the snake goddess. We have Kalu Rai as the god of crocodiles. And because people of different religion lives in harmony in Sundarbans, you can see various religious attires Like if you see Bono Bibi herself, she is this young Hindu girl
Hmm. Right.
that from the sindoor and her bangles you can denote that, and then you have is main dressed in Islamic clothes.
Hmm. Right. Right. And this man dressed up like a pandit, correct? So it's
Yeah.
very interesting to know that everybody here lives in harmony even today. So when you go to the village side, you will not find a mosque, you will not find a church, but you will definitely find a temple of Bono Bibi inside the village, inside the park, at each watchtower. Whenever there is a honey collection period, you will find small one baby temples made at the entrance of the area where the honey collectors are going, so that they can pray to Ma Bonabibi that please save us from any natural calamity, be it the tiger or the crocodile or anything else. Please keep us safe and ensure that we come back safe and sound to the village. And the whole experience which you are going and looking around all depends on the locally trained guides. Can you talk about this, Rabi? You work
So
for.
this actually helps so much with the conservation.
Yeah.
These guys are local villagers. You are
Hmm.
training them. The forest department provides them with training,
Hmm.
so they can be with you. They are fantastic naturalists. They are very effective guides. They will
Hmm.
spot a tiger for you, a bird for you, and actually, in a way, they are earning from the forest directly. So once you are earning from the forest, you will start protecting the forest. Like all the forest staffs, the boatmen, they are all from local villages.
Hmm.
The forest department took this step, and it's giving us fantastic results in Sundarbans. You can see how well protected Sundarbans is now.
To be honest, it's very true because when we talk about back in the day until date, the forest department has done a tremendous job in making eco development committees, in ensuring that there is no brain drain from the region. It employs the locals as private entrepreneurs, that you please employ the local people. And of course, these guides are also very self-motivated because please understand one thing, that the language spoken in this area was only Bengali. And with the passage of time and with interaction with different tourists, the guides have learned how to speak English. The English may not be perfect, but it is true that it is completely authentic, the experience is authentic, and the knowledge is, of course, unparalleled. That's there. Fantastic. When I go then, and when we talk about guides, there's been a lot of experience that I've seen. The guides have also been doing fishermen as fishermen and dinghy boats when it's low
Yeah,
season. Yeah.
yeah.
So,
So this fishing culture is very, very deep rooted in Sundarbans itself. It's what they used to do. Now the forest department can't fetch everyone into guidance and forest patrolling. So there are people who are going inside the park, who are fishing from the parts they are allowed to fish from.
hmm.
Yeah, it's a coexistence of both the professions.
But I can see some women on the boat in the previous image. Something
Yeah,
which was very interesting was there were three women and two men.
yeah.
Sorry,
So
one.
though the Sundarbans society is mostly patriarchal, women are given much more respect in Sundarbans. They accompany their families while going inside the forest. They take part in all sorts of jobs like fishing, crab collection, prawn seed collection. They don't go in the honey collection period, but in the fishing activities they take part fully.
And if you can see in this particular picture, what is very fantastic and a good sign of women empowerment is that the woman is actually sitting on the back and actually rowing the boat. She is
Yeah.
uh, she is being very strong. She's putting herself out there, and is being an equal part of the family and culture. Fantastic. Now going to the next image, which we just saw about the honey collection. This is another livelihood factor. So when does this honey collection happen, and what really happens here, Adi?
The honey collection season is mostly in March and April, like
Hmm.
the beginning of March. It starts from March and ends in April. So here you can see actually what used to happen earlier. There were a lot of man-animal conflicts because these guys are going inside the forest in tiger territory,
Hmm.
and the forest is so dense you can't spot a tiger inside the forest. So accidents were quite frequent in the early days. So the forest department noticed that the tigers are mostly hunting from behind because the tiger is an ambush hunter. So So the forest department came up with this idea to give them masks to wear it backwards. So they are wearing masks from backwards, and the tiger is getting fooled here. It's thinking that, okay, so there's another face on this side. And conflicts really dropped after that.
Conflict really dropped after that. Yeah, because I believe again that it was just hunting the human beings, thinking it's a prey base, because they were setting and bending down. And I also believe the man-animal conflict really reduced because of the fencing and the light electricity that came in 2 years back into the Sundarbans has made a dramatic change. Hello, Riddhi. Okay. Since we've lost them right now. So what is very interesting to note is, for the last 10 years, the forest department was doing the fencing in separate parts. It's completed its complete fencing of the whole park last year. And for man-animal conflict, the government has taken electricity to some islands. So earlier, people would just leave their house from sunrise to sunset. There would be no travel in the Sundarbans. But today, because there's electricity in certain areas, people are much more carefree, much more comfortable heading out. Economy has got boosted. Also, what has happened is life has gotten easier. Till the time there was no electricity, the villages were all very sustainable. I think the Sundarban village is one of the most sustainable villages in India because there's no fresh groundwater source. So every single house here actually has a pukur, which does rainwater harvesting. Now this water is actually collected for cleaning, washing, drinking, for all house purposes. Also, they clean this water by using lime and potassium permanganate. So, that's one part of sustainability. Second part being, there was no garbage. They don't have any plastic. They were growing produce and they were eating that. So today Sundarbans has, it's a no plastic zone. So when we recommend that travelers who are going from Calcutta or from anywhere in India, if you're carrying plastic waste with you, please try and bring it back. There is no proper garbage disposal system there. If you are taking, the garbage does get segregated in some of the accommodation who are, of course, as I mentioned before, accredited, and then it's sold to kabadiwalas. But if we can reduce, influxing this area with waste, nothing like it. Right now we had the cyclone Amphan. We had a lot of people come and give clothes. Request people in Sundarbans are very, self-respecting. It's better you give them one brand new shirt than instead of used clothes. They really don't appreciate that. It's important to understand the culture that they do not like to use used things. Another thing is about man-animal conflict. Today, with the increase of tourism, and this area is one of the areas which actually has a destination carrying capacity, with each number of boats being fixed which are allowed inside the park. There are a number of watchtowers which only allow certain number of boats to enter at a certain time, and you do not get to enter the watchtower until and unless the boat occupants have left. So that's again very sustainable. And tourism coming in is actually reduce the brain drain from the region and is helping in development of the islands very well. And yeah, that's my input from it. But when coming back to a tourist perspective, most people come here to see wildlife and to photograph wildlife. Photographing from the boat is quite a challenge, and that's where Riddhi's expertise comes in, because he has been photographing in the Sundarbans from 2014, and he is going to be giving you some very key tips right now. Riddhi. Hello?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear now.
Yeah, sorry, my internet connection is very low. Okay, so in Sundarbans, you can't photograph from a tripod or a monopod. You have to use a bin bag or you have to shoot handheld. And when it comes to lenses, you have to carry a wide angle lens for the landscapes and a telephoto lens from 300 mm to 800 mm. The more, the better. For we like to keep a safe distance from the wild animals. And we like to give them respect. We like to give them they're at ease.
Also, what is very important is that if you get very close to a wild animal, you might get close, but you will scare him and chase him away. And this also is not a responsible initiative, because then another boat which is coming with more guests,
Yeah.
or they will not be able to sight this animal. So we actually request people, when they're traveling, when you're especially traveling on the boat, do not rush to one side of the boat. Take your chance, be at a distance, observe. I think one of the best ways to observe is, of course, by seeing with your own eyes. Capture it with a camera, carry the correct lens, carry your bean bag. You have to hold your camera steady in your hand. Any other tips which you would have, Riddhi, for
And you have to communicate with the boatman, because the boatman is driving the boat. So you have to ask him to move the boat correctly. Like the expert boatmen, they have this expertise. They can judge light. They can gauge the proper angle of the shot. They will get that done for you. If you're not traveling with a proper trained boatman, you have to communicate with him and give them those sorts of instructions.
Right. Also, it is very important to communicate what are you looking to photograph. There might be a lot of different type of instances you can see. Like I remember during, I actually saw a kill happening, not a tiger kill, but a water monitor lizard eating a crab, and that itself was a fantastic shot. Then you can see maybe, a chase happening, or crocodile attacking. They can be something very different. So you have to try and encourage and absorb whatever the park is giving to you, instead of just running after one species, that is a tiger. And that is a and with this, we'll come to important things to carry. Please note that the Sundarbans is a very, very remote location. It has basic things available. You can't really send anybody to the shop to go and get you an iPhone charger for a 10x or so on. Please carry your charger, your power banks with you. There are certain resorts which offer 24-hour electricity. There are certain resorts which only offer you 4 or 5 hours of electricity. To please choose your accommodation with proper guidance. Do your research. When choosing your boat, please try and see the boat is got its filtration system in place, it's got silencers in place, so that you have a good experience. Also, when it comes to diet plan, if you are specially diet, if you have paleo diet, you have vegan, please wherever you're staying, let them know in advance, because not all places can cater to those things. There are some properties like ours which of course have air conditioning, but again, please carry everything you may need with you. Don't carry too much as well, because your luggage will be carried from the transport to the boat, and from the boat to the accommodation by a coolie or by the resort staff or by yourself. So try and travel light, not too heavy. That's just the tips from us. Now coming down, anything else you would like to add, Riddhi?
Yeah, mostly for the birders, it would be great if you can carry a binocular for your personal use.
Yes, of course. Please carry your own binocular, and please carry your checklist in case where you're going, about what species you want to go and see. And please try and communicate in advance to check if you're looking for a specific species, that you've planned the right time to visit. Now with this, we will go to the question and answers round. Thank you so much. If you have any questions, please post them in the Q&A section, and we will answer them one by one.
Oh, thank you so much.
May I just ask one question?
Yes, please.
About this is about the fact that the sea level in Sundarbans is rising,
right,
and can pose a danger to Calcutta. So
right.
how relevant is this today?
It's extremely relevant, Mr. Kapoor.
Yeah,
we might lose the natural habitat, the only tiger habitat with mangroves. So it's very necessary that we take the necessary steps to control it.
And to be honest, Mr. Kapoor, when I'm talking about, again, going back to 1999, different, when the sea level was not as high as today. When we look at the satellite image of the island, the embankments around the villages currently were not as high. Because of the sea levels rising, the embankments around the villages have also become. So today, most of the islands are like a bowl shape. Well, I'm talking about a bowl shape that if there, in case there is a storm surge or a wind gust, which is more than 70 nautical miles, these embankments can break. And if these do break, all the islands will have inundation. And the challenge with inundation is that it gets rid of all the sweet water supply which you have in islands. It makes the soil completely unsuitable for growing any vegetable and farming for at least a minimum period of 3 to 4 years. We did face that challenge back in 2009 firsthand. So it's very important that we, as a priority for Calcutta, take mangrove plantation as a drive. Like, if people can get together, we can get together with an organization. We can actually monetize this for the locals by, I think a mangrove plant, a small one costs approximately 10 rupees. A bigger one costs something around 15 to 20 rupees depending on the size. And you have to plant one plant per 2 square feet. So if we can monetize it by getting carbon credits, and this carbon credits can be encashed for the locals. So if we can do a drive like this can actually help in protecting Calcutta overall. Because if we have a strong mangrove plantation all on the south, we have a chance to survive this, to weaken the storm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So we have a question coming from Mr. Vivek Khanna.
Yes.
What is the tiger population at Sundarbans and how is the census conducted in such difficult terrain?
Riddhi, would you like to take this, please?
Yeah. So first of all, I am coming on the census part. Census is earlier it was done with pugmarks and scats, but now the forest department is employing camera traps inside the forest, and they are studying the stripe patterns.
So they are actually individually doing it, and the number of tigers has actually increased as per last census, which is a fantastic news. In 2017 to 2018, we had 87 tigers, and the last census, which was 2019-2020, we have 96 tigers.
Yeah.
Been accounted for. And of course, like Riddhi just mentioned, it's more by taking pictures, putting camera traps in higher elevation, and matching the stripes and recognizing them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much. We have another question coming from Mr. Sanjeev Jodhar. Any bad effect of mangrove plants on local people?
Bad effects? No.
No. To be honest, Mr. Jodhar, it's very interesting to see that mangrove is always, it's got a lot of positives. It is number one, act as a filter. It traps carbon dioxide in the ground and it releases more oxygen in the air. It acts as a barrier for incoming storms and cyclones. It helps in holding the soil together. Also, there are certain species of mangroves which earlier the locals used to use for burning. When there was no option of gas, chula, this was the wood that was used by them. And there are also some shrubs and plants which grow on the embankment, which were used to cook by the locals. So till date, we do not know of any particular species, at least in the Indian Sundarban region, which is harmful to the local populace. Yeah.
Okay. Next question is coming from again Mr. Vivek Khanna. Did the recent cyclone affect the tiger population and other wildlife?
Can I take the question?
Yes, please.
Okay, so as per the Forest Department news, there are no such news of death of tigers or wildlife destruction of mammals and other wild animals. But we have to see now the forest is closed. It's just opened. So the Forest Department is also doing its work. It's making a total estimation. But as of recent news, nothing. It's perfectly like before.
Yeah.
Okay, we have another question coming from Mr. Devansh Chalan. Does the area grow any fruits, any vegetables? If yes, which ones? I think
No.
they will
Riddhi, do you know any fruits?
Is it eatable fruits or normal mangrove fruits?
Yeah, he's asking for fruits, vegetables like edibles ones, I guess.
I think watermelons are grown in Sundarbans area.
Watermelons are further down, but not in this region. Generally, the habitat does not have any edible. Watermelon
Yeah.
is done as a commercial activity now in the Sundarbans, but that is only in the southern part where you have the sandy soil available, more towards the Bay of Bengal. But as you go towards northern part of Sundarbans, there aren't any fruits grown there. It's mostly a lot of honey is done here, which is known as mangrove honey, and it is generally exported to the United States as swamp honey. Uh, of course, people do grow fruits and vegetables for their own selves, but otherwise, in mangrove plants, we do have nipa fruits and so on. Riddhi, can you please expand on that? Hello, Riddhi. Okay.
I
So
think we have.
we do have mangrove plants which have fruits, but they're not edible by human beings. Yes.
Okay, next question is coming from Mr. Gautam Ghosh. What is the gestation period of the tiger and what is the average litter?
In Sundarbans, hello, can you
Yes,
hear me?
yes, yes,
Yeah,
yes.
yeah.
You're
Okay.
back. Thank God.
So, so in Sundarbans, the gestation period for tigers is around 92 to 112 days, as far as I can remember. And what was the next question? What is the average litter?
Right.
Yeah,
Actually,
yeah.
we don't have a large number of litters in Sundarbans when it comes to the tigers litters. Mostly two or three, and in most cases, the fittest one survives because it's a very hard terrain for a tiger cub to grow on.
Oh,
So
okay,
the number was 87 to 96 is the jump, not 19 to 96, 87 to 96.
okay, okay.
Yeah,
We have another question coming from Ms. Arundhati Ray. How close do people live to the mangrove?
close, pretty close. So the village mangroves are generally on the embankments, and right after the embankment ends, you will find houses made in the Sundarbans. You will have so each house is generally approximately depending on the financial ability is a couple of feet away. So you generally have an embankment, you have a road, and then starts the houses. So maybe 10 to 15, 20 feet away. Yeah.
Okay, we have a question coming from via mail. I would like to ask the question here. That is, under the climate change scenario where high intensity events like cyclones and floods due to breach of embankments have become a regular phenomena in the Sundarbans Island, what
Right.
feasible adaptation strategies do you think can be designed or implemented for protection of these critically vulnerable zones? It's a very good question. So I think ma'am will answer.
I would generally agree with one thing that we need to stop, polluting our water source. Today we are wasting water. That's one, of course. Number two, encourage plantation of mangroves. I think that's again, I'm coming back to it again and again because that's the only reason whichever part of Sundarban was saved right now during Amphan or Bulful was only because of the mangrove plantation. If we did not have that, we would have been completely a flat land. 100%. And Riddhi, I think you can also add something to it with your own observation and experience. Uh,
Yes.
Riddhi?
So first of all, we have to protect the mangroves. That's first and foremost.
Right.
And then again, we have to educate the locals not to cut the mangroves and in conservation take part in conservation activities like that.
Hmm.
Then again, when it comes to the cyclone thing, the thing that the government is doing now is they're building cyclone centers, storm relief centers. So when it comes to, see, first of all, we have to protect the local people.
Hmm.
And now bonds are much higher. Most of the villages earlier used to be mud villages. Now we can see a lot of brick villages. Interestingly, Sundarbans can't produce very good quality brick because of the salt water. So the brick has to be imported from Kolkata. So that's why you see a lot less count in those cemented houses. But yeah, it's growing. It's growing. We have to protect that.
So again, coming back to it, that we have to ensure that there is proper conservation, and the number of tourists who are going to Sundarban should go in a sustainable manner. Try and spread out your time that you can travel throughout the year. Of course, try and not carry plastic because it's detrimental. Ensure that you encourage the locals to give back. Whoever is going in, that you please respect the local culture. And you, if also what is very important is that the new generation which is coming up all over India, I feel it's not only for the Sundarbans, but they're very tech savvy. So they need to understand and implement the best practices within the villages and make it grow sustainably. With a proactive feel that we have to develop this. This is the number of lodges we are going to be allowing. This is the maximum number of boats we are going to be allowing, and that's it. If there are 50 boats, that's it. We will not be allowing 51 boats. Because if you're going to crowd the rivers, it's going to become like a shipping route in the end of the day. So it's very important to stop unnecessary construction in the Sundarban. That's my take on it.
Okay. Now we have a technical question for Riddhi. So
Yes.
Mr. Arpan Sen has asked, I have 70 to 300 lens. Is it possible to take good photography?
Yeah, I'd say it's absolutely possible. If you have seen that crocodile image, it's taken with a 70 to 200 lens in Sundarbans. So if you are using a crop body, I think that's a very reasonable focal length.
Okay, and he's also having a Canon 200D2. Is that good?
Fantastic. That's a crop sensor body, so that makes your lens around 450 millimeters on the tele end.
That's great. We have another question coming from Mr. Sanjeev Jodhar. Any Bonababy temple then situated inside the forest?
Yeah, there are Bonababy temples inside the watchtowers, not inside the forest, or not at least in the tourism zone.
So if you want to visit any other than, I did not understand the question. So inside the forest, like we mentioned before, there are these small makeshift Bonababy temples that the fishermen and the honey collectors make, but you can't really get off and go there. They're just used by these local villagers to pray and enter. It looks more like a hat and a very improper kacha construction. But the fixed ones are inside the watchtowers. Nidhi Dopani is supposed to have an old watchtower, but one can't go there because it's a restricted area. There's one on Waxfall Ghat, and yeah, that's where you can go and see the watchtowers. Do we have any more questions?
We have another question coming for Mr. Gautam Ghosh. A few years back, there was an attempt to establish a factory to produce sugar from beetroot. What was its status? To me, it would be a disaster to the ecology. I don't know about it.
Riddhi, would you like to? I am not aware of this, Mr. Gautam.
Yes.
Even I'm not aware of that factory.
Okay. It must be, see, Mr. Ghosh, what is very interesting to note is we are on the wildlife side of it. Any such, factory or anything coming out in the Sundarbans would be coming wherever it is land connected. So this would be more towards the Bakhali, Fraserganj side, or towards that Bhagatapur side where it is land connected. It will be difficult for anybody to set a factory where the national park is, because there is no influx of fresh water available here. Yeah.
I'd like to mention is I think what he's referring to is IFB Agro had a proposal to set up a sugar the plant from beetroot. They want to make alcohol actually from beetroot. But I don't think that project progressed. And it was, as you said, closer to the Calcutta side rather than the mangrove side.
Yeah, I just did a research on it online and there's no update. It's in the South 24 Parganas. It's in Nurpur. So that's not a part of the forest area.
Okay, so we have another question coming from an anonymous attendee. So would you like to add anything about the health and education facilities available in Sundarbans?
Okay, so health and education. So health and education is definitely been a challenge because there aren't many hospitals and government aid available. There are some NGOs who are working on that area. And for example, like what I can talk about firsthand is there's a homeopathy doctor who comes to Waxpol Ghat every Wednesday, and all the whole village lines up, and there are a couple of doctors who come, and they come and give medicines. And what they do is they go to different islands every week, so they cover up 4 to 5 islands in a month. But other than that, what we have done is previously we've done campaigns with the panchayat to educate the people about hygiene, safety. There are a lot of waterborne diseases which happen in the Sundarbans, and a lot of people get skin infections because they're wading through water, salt water. So now that's with tourism coming in, you can see less number of people going into the water. But yes, there is a lot of issue of thyroid, stomach ailments, because they are drinking this water which is not really filtered with the RO, but filtered through, using lime powder. So there are stomach issues there. There are health issues there. And the more can be done. And if you are interested in doing something for health, please let us know. We will be very happy to set something up for you.
Okay, we have another question from Ms. Tanvi Chaudhary. What are the enforced precautionary measures, safety and hygiene advisories amidst of pandemic situation? I think that's a very relevant question.
Yes, I think we have proed it right by now.
Yeah.
Riddhi, would you like to take this? Should I take this?
You take this. You take this.
Okay, so what the forest department has done is a fantastic job. They have opened it up, though the locals are not very excited about tourists coming in, as there are no cases in the northern part of the Sundarbans. When I'm talking about northern part, I'm talking about Gosaba, Bali, Dayapur. There are no cases there right now. So if anybody is coming back, they'll be asked to live in the school at the entry point for 2 weeks, and if they're all right, then they are allowed to enter the villages. In terms of the boat safaris, we have recommended to the forest department that the boat capacity will be reduced. So in case the boat has fixed seating, the next seat next to you should be kept empty. It will be a first in, last out concept. So if you're going in first, you will come out last. There will be a toilet which will be cleaned regularly, but that's something which we can talk about us. In general, everybody will have their own SOPs implemented. The forest department is not allowing anybody to get down into the watchtowers for the time being, because we want to ensure that there's no cross-contamination. You have to climb up in the watchtowers. So no getting down, is just going to be a boat cruise. We have also recommended that any village interaction for this time should be suspended. Because again, if you're going to the village area, you're talking, if you sneeze, if the local people get corona, they do not have the health facilities to really recover or the affordability to manage it. So in terms of safety and security, that's what's been done. Also, when I talk about Sundarban Tiger Camp here, we are not opening till September 15th. We have postponed our opening, because I know the number in Calcutta and everywhere is rising. We want to be cautious. We want to be responsible for the local populace. I hope that answers your question, Tanvi. Thank you.
We have come to the end of our session. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us today. I think all of our attendees have enjoyed the whole show. Thank you so much for joining us today. And before we end our session, I would like to thank Mr. Kapoor, Mr. Kamshagar and Mr. Riddhi for joining us today for this wonderful session on Sundarbans, the Anand Sundarbans basically. And before we end, I would like every attendee to go on our like and share our Facebook page as well as our YouTube. And also please visit our website in www.waxpolhotels.com where you can find a lot of information regarding Sundarbans as well as Western Ghats National Parks.